This is a place called Valley Village, which is it's technically separate from North Hollywood as of the last 20 years. This is on the south side, and um, it became its own community to have a little bit. They wanted some more community services, as far as I understand, and so they kind of separated from North Hollywood and became their own thing, but very much still in the North Hollywood orbit. Um, it's in this area, it definitely you hit a much more middle to upper class, families with children, higher education rates. But when we get into North Hollywood, it has a little bit of a different story. This is up here on the left is North Hollywood High School. North Hollywood, I think, technically begins. It's either this block or the next block. I'm assuming North Hollywood High School is actually in North Hollywood. Um, so yeah, the when I was looking at the student-teacher ratio for all the schools in North Hollywood, they seem to be on par with LA's student-teacher ratios, on average between 21 and 24 students per teacher, um, which I think is close to the national average. There also are a lot of charter schools in the North Hollywood area, or a good handful of charter and private schools, which definitely have, or smaller ratios, I should say, of teacher to student. So yeah, we're officially in North Hollywood. So I'm going to take us over first to kind of like the hip part of town. That's kind of on the south side. I wouldn't say up and coming. It's already here. This part is called the Arts District, the NoHo Arts District, and it kind of built up around the subway stop that is here. We have the red line that goes all the way down to Union Station, actually, in downtown LA. So to the right here is actually a park. It's a pretty big park, actually. And there is a community rec center. So yeah, this is all a park. It's probably the biggest green space right now in North Hollywood area, as well as a library that is a place that we're looking at of how do we recognize that's how you can resource in communities with knowledge and books and things like that, and so, or even career services. So we're wondering, how do we leverage the library here? Now we're gonna turn onto Magnolia, and this is gonna take us to the heart of the Arts District. And so this is definitely a newer area, but this probably started building up in the 90s. You talk to people who have lived here for a long time. It was when the metro stop arrived, and then things started getting built up around it. It's right close to the park and the library, so a lot of community resources, and it started getting built up. And this is what a lot of people are saying is the future of North Hollywood, which is complicated because there were people here before that might be pushed out if this kind of younger, more hip, whatever area kind of starts to expand. But you see, if you look to the right, we have a lot of North Hollywood for the longest time was just a lot of mom and pop stores, family businesses that are operating that way, and a lot of those, particularly in this area, have been already more pushed out in favor of more kind of commercial or different needs. Honestly, there's just different things that younger people are looking for. They're looking for bars, they're looking for workout studios and all that kind of stuff. So there's actually a lot of theater even in this district. This is like the central intersection. So anyway you go from here, you'll find some offices, you'll find like coffee shops or tea shops or trendy restaurants. Down there's a comic book shop, and there's several like smaller theaters up here. So you find a lot of entertainment industry professionals kind of live or work in this area. And to the left, you start seeing some of kind of these, there's a vape shop, there's the salon, there's a juice bar, Chipotle, uh, rolled ice cream, pubs, things like that. So that's kind of what this area is. There's a big 24-hour fitness here. The Federal is a bar that's really popular over here. So it's all kind of like harbored in this one area for the metro stop, which is right here. So people can ride in and out from downtown LA to right here. It's actually an old train station converted into a coffee shop. There's some really nice apartments. It might be hard to see through the fence over there. But this is that area that is just grown up, and it's it's hip. It's the arts district. It's cool. It's all that kind of stuff. And this is where a lot of people say the rest of North Hollywood is moving. But we're gonna keep driving north, because the north it starts painting a different story. You see a lot more of the history of North Hollywood being kind of a more. It started off agricultural in the 1800s and moved to a more suburban getaway from LA. It was like the perfect place to raise a family, that kind of thing. People would own their houses, and obviously it had a seedy side that came up in the 60s and 70s in particular. But it was all through it, it was it was more of that like late 50s, 60s, 70s. This is the suburbs, the place to be. And so you'll see a lot of these kind of older storefronts, older shops, mom and pop shops, family owned things. Right now, it used to be that kind of like where families live, people would own their houses, things like that. Now 70 to 75% of people who live here are renters, not homeowners. So it's now a very transient city, which there are a lot of young people who are in the entertainment industry who live here, so that they can kind of go down, and that because it's cheaper here than it would be in Hollywood or in that area. You also have a lot of warehouses and things like up here, prop warehouses, because there's a little bit more land up here. And that's kind of the younger generation. It has a high population of 24 to 35-year-olds that live here. On par with LA, I believe, but high for the country. Over here is our favorite place to eat, Mofongos. It's a Puerto Rican restaurant. My co-pastor is Puerto Rican, and we like to bring our church smaller group here whenever we can, actually. So yeah, you just see we have our classic In-N-Out, a little green space right here, and this is kind of was the main drag that they're starting to see. A lot of these shops may or may not be around in the near future. We'll see, and partly because of a development that I'm about to drive us by. So now we're on the more northern part of North Hollywood. Or at least central North Hollywood. And we're starting to see kind of a shift in what North Hollywood looks like. It says CVS Pharmacy IMAS. This area is 50% Latinx and about 25% white. And I have the demographics as it breaks down below that, but those are the primary demographics. There's a high population of people actually born in Mexico, foreign nationals that live here now, Mexican Americans, as well as other Latinx communities. And I was not able to find the statistics on the racial and income gap between the people of color and the white people in this area specifically. I could find it for LA, but the trends show that people of color in the Latinx community will make far less than than white people. So this is NoHo West. So this is a huge development. This is where this is in the middle of NoHo. This is where they're saying it's about to change a lot because of this development. This is being done, I'm going to drive us by it, by the same people who have done the Grove and the Americana, which is in Glendale, and the Grove is in La Brea, kind of in mid-city area. which are huge developments with like dining, shopping, living, live, work, play. It's going to have a Trader Joe's and a ton of restaurants. And this could fundamentally change the how NoHo is viewed, as it has the arts district, and now it has this kind of more major development that we're driving by. I think it's 25 acres of development. Um, and it should be, they were estimating it was going to be open in fall, which seems crazy for where they are now, but when this stuff goes up, it can go pretty quickly. So this could very well change the landscape here, and that's what a lot of people are expecting as this kind of expands its footprint and it kind of meets with the arts district. What does that mean for the communities that live here that may not have the same interests, or the same means to be able to afford to live in these kind of higher tax areas and things like that. So we're coming up, I believe, on an elementary school. This one actually tested, when I was looking, tested very well. I was just looking at all the different schools, and some schools perform quote unquote well and might be well resourced, others don't. This one seemed to have some pretty good test scores compared to the national average. Victory Boulevard Elementary School. So the age demographic here, it's a mixture of a lot of young single people. Is definitely has a higher rate of unmarried and never married singles than the rest of the country, and a little high for LA. And then it also has has some of the young families as well, obviously. And then it has kind of the older families that have lived here for a long time, who've potentially maybe just the parents kind of living empty nesters and things like that. Talking to the pastors in the area, they say that empty nester kind of generation, most, if not all of them, will already have a church community that they call home. They've been here, they know where they want to be, who they want to be around, all that kind of stuff. It's the younger generation, the people in the 24 to 35 year old age bracket. Those are the people that tend to not be in the churches in this area, which seems to be a much larger trend in general. But yeah, so this is, just as we're going further north, which we're almost to the tip of North Hollywood, I believe. This is just more suburbs. There's a middle school here, KFC, just kind of more. These have been around for a long time, all of these storefronts and areas. There's a Sears. So this is one face of North Hollywood, but most people would say isn't the future face of North Hollywood. Which we're very attentive to as much as we can be in how we're thinking about what we do in this community, and who we just recognize that we are young and in our 24 to 35 age range, and that's the demographic we want to reach, but there are other demographics here. So how do we do that well? How are we good neighbors? How do we partner with making sure that those who are staying here, whose whole lives have been here, are able to remain here and continue their families here? It's just a conversation we're having, like how do we partner in economic development and city councils, and considering what kind of policies are made, what kind of decisions are made with our money and our housing. LA, there's a housing crisis kind of in general. There's just not enough affordable housing. How do we, as a church, how do we play a role to make sure that we're building affordable housing and we're meeting all the standards that are set by the government for that, and exceeding them, because we want people to be able to have a stable home here. But yeah, if we took a right here and we went about 5 minutes down the road, we'd be at the Burbank Airport. So It's very close to an airport. Burbank is a little bit more expensive to fly in and out of, but way easier than going to LAX. But it does have that access as well to that kind of transit, which is not a normal thing for a lot of communities to have that access to an airport. Yeah, there's a rec center up here on the left that we've taken note of. Some of this is more of the smaller single family houses and apartments and condominiums, like kind of all mixed together. There's not a single style that dominates. Right here we have looks like some apartments, and then up here is another, here's the rec center, and then there's a green space over here to the right with some sports fields and things like that. The bridge we're going under, this is the 170, which is just a major traffic artery to go north and further into the San Fernando Valley. So that's the main kind of highway. So in general, the population of North Hollywood makes less than, we have lower incomes on average, or median income is definitely lower than average. So we have a higher percentage of people who make under $40,000 a year in North Hollywood than the city of LA as a whole. So there is definitely, like, poverty is here. And you can see it when you're driving around, when you're walking around, even in the arts district. And so there seems to be a wealth disparity between the south and the north parts of North Hollywood. As you get closer to the city of LA, you have a little bit of the more wealth concentrated in there. And as you get to the northern part of North Hollywood, you have less wealth and less access to resource. And that's something that these are things that we're trying to keep in mind, because we don't know what this means for our community, but we know if we're ignorant of these facts that we're never going to be able to play a part in kind of working with people and helping them build the lives that they're looking for. We're driving back south now, back towards Valley Village, and we're just gonna keep seeing how this was a suburban area for a long time, and that the suburban footprint is big, but these kind of newer, flashier developments are growing pretty quickly, very quickly. Most people that we've talked to, pastors, native people who have grown up here, native North Hollywood people, they say they just don't recognize the city sometimes, North Hollywood, and because it's happening quickly. It's not that it's been a slow change over their lifetimes. It's the last 15 years have done a lot in North Hollywood. Lots of construction. I'm just realizing that. I'm like, wow, that's more than, I mean, I knew there was a lot, but this is quite a lot. If you're familiar with LA, like the Silver Lake and Echo Park areas have been, rapidly growing and changing and becoming more hip and cool, and those are closer to the center of LA, and a lot of people are talking about North NoHo is on that same track, and in 10 years we won't recognize it. So yeah, all this construction everywhere. They're fixing roads, they're doing the big new development, but you're also seeing it in smaller ways of little retail areas being torn down and rebuilt as something else, something more modern. And it's interesting because North Hollywood, the reason why it became a suburb is because it's not contiguous with Hollywood, so it's like not actually connected directly. There's actually, I think Studio City is in between us and Hollywood, but more importantly, there's mountains between us, or the hills, the Hollywood Hills are in between us. So it's actually a good 20-ish minute drive to Hollywood. So this is a little removed from the city, which is, I think, one reason why it didn't get attention for a while. But also with the current trends of some people moving out of the city, younger people moving out of the city so that they're able to afford and make a living and things like that, why it's now getting the attention it's getting. We're about to see, as we're starting to go south and get more on the south side of it, it gets you can start seeing some of the newer and renovated apartments, bigger apartments. So where a lot of the growth and the change is coming from the south going north. You can just see that as you drive, just the vibe changes. So yeah, my co-pastor and I, Chris, we're just constantly, we're not meeting in a specific location. Oh, we're meeting at houses, and we've been at 3 different houses in this area. People who actually live here. One is, and actually hits some of the newer demographics you're talking about. One is a family, a young family with a 2-year-old. One is actually a young family with a 9-year-old, an 8-year-old, somewhere in there. And he actually works in the entertainment industry. And then a young single man who lives in the house that he grew up in, and they're actually trying to Airbnb, turn the house. He lives in the guest house outside, and they're turning their house into an Airbnb. But he's lived here his entire life. And so that's where we're meeting right now. And those are the people that are in our community. And our community is made up of several young single people and a couple married couples. And that's where we are in the process. And it's very representative of the kind of new growth that's happening with North Hollywood. And so we just have to recognize that that's who and where we are. That is our location. That is what we have to offer. And Chris is very involved with Puerto Ricans in Action, which is a group out here that puts on a lot of Puerto Rican cultural events and tries to do some activism around Puerto Rico and getting them the attention and the aid and the support and that Puerto Rico needs, especially given the hurricane and things like that. He's spending a lot of time building relationship with that community, just because that is his community. Those are his people that he loves. And we've had some events at the bar, the Federal, like where we're meeting and where we're bringing people in is typically through like a happy hour, or even for Easter, because we're a church plant out of another church, we're having our church service in the morning at the other church, and after that evening, our community is just going to do kind of like a big potluck celebration, and that's how we're celebrating Easter as a community, which just makes sense for us and the kind of people and that we are. We're meeting in the evenings most of the time. Again, that felt like it just made sense given our circumstances and our context of coming from a church that meets in the morning, but also it made sense just given kind of the younger population and the kind of the young singles. That's what a lot of people like to do, is meet in the evenings instead of waking up in the mornings. So yeah, heading a little bit further south, you start seeing some of the more manicured lawns and things like that. And I believe this technically takes us just over the border into Valley Village again.